You're watching City Channel 4, your window to our community.
Good afternoon. My name is Jane Gay, and I work with the Iowa Program for Assistive Technology at the Centers for Disabilities and Development at the University of Iowa. So I'm here today to talk about personal cares and helping devices, assistive technology devices. And there's a lot of things, and I know when you talk about helping devices and people that are in home care, you often jump to wheelchairs and electric beds, and those are an important part of care and caregiving with hospice care, but I want to share a few other devices with you today. So, research has shown over many years, and of course we have to have research to prove things and get funding for things, and we are still working on funding of some things, but research out of Bill Mann's New York Aging Center has showed repeatedly over the past decades that caregivers need and identify themselves assistance with these type of strategies or these types of activities: bathing, toileting, feeding, dressing, mobility, and then how to pay and plan for assistive technology devices or installing it. And why are those important? When you look at the functional needs here, is that for the care provider, they are doing physical work that they themselves begin to get worn down. There's lifting, there's moving, there's just plain fatigue because of all of the work. It takes a lot of time to do caregiving. The number of chores that need to be done or assistance that needs to be provided, the actual work of doing it. It takes a lot out. The back injury and the stress of giving care. All of those things are reasons why we consider accommodations or assistive technology in this case. Now, just having someone assist someone to do, helping the person to be lifted or to be fed, that is an accommodation, okay? But assistive technology is a different type of an accommodation that can help do this. So when we talk about assistive technology, what is assistive technology? You may not be aware of that term. And it came about 22 years ago with some legislation. But assistive technology, very easily, AT stands for assistive technology. And you'll see me waving in this television show, and I'm asking for the slides to be advanced. Okay, assistive technology is the big term, but what we're talking about are helping devices, gizmos, gadgets, pieces of equipment, if you will. Simple things that are a possible solution for you. And as we look at assistive technology, we need to consider that even the people that are sitting at this presentation or listening to it come with a different background and a different reason for being here. But assistive technology or pieces of equipment that we're going to be talking about maximizes a person's ability to do something in a specific place, in the demands. So it brings together the person with their strengths, what they can do and what they can't do, and even what the caregiver can and can't do. The environment, in this case, we're often talking about the home, but it could be the car as you help move your person to see the doctor. It could be the bathroom, it could be the kitchen, the living room. So the very specific environment, not just the home, but where in the home you're actually trying to do something, or maybe in multiple places, and the task that needs to be done: to move, to lift, to get on the toilet, to take a bath, to eat, to read, to talk on the phone, to communicate. So what is the task? And I realize that even in thinking about my own experience, and I am a care provider, I have been a care provider, I am currently a care provider, and I expect to be a care provider for quite a while, that the person that we're talking about, the person you're giving care to, in your own case, you need to be looking at them specifically about what they can do and can't do. And you might be at a different place in your journey than the person sitting next to you. You might just be starting the caregiver process, and you can look at these devices as something you want to move toward, or to consider, well, we're going to need that in the future. And realize the sooner you introduce devices into caregiving, the more accepting they are, versus waiting further on and then it's something different and it's harder and you got to think about it. So the sooner you start thinking about using devices, the better. They may be coming into you as a care provider with for a different reason. maybe after a stroke, maybe after heart attack, maybe with dementia, maybe with cancer. The reason isn't so much important as realizing what the functional abilities are. Not that they can't get up and down, it doesn't matter why. The important part is that they can't get up and down without assistance or needing some help. And as you think about the journey too, you're going to see again from my caregiving experience, not only as a family caregiver, but as a professional caregiver as a Johnson County public health nurse in my past, is that I am going to not only encourage you to think about assistive technology early, but also to think about using technology to keep the independence of the person you're giving care to, so that they are as independent and have that dignity for as long as possible, instead of jumping clear to the dependent mode quicker. And there'll be some good examples of this along the way, so you understand why I'm coming from that. Okay, so assistive technology has a large range when we talk about it. It can be something very low tech, as the risers under the chair of the person. You can see that it's lifting it up higher. And that could be just so it's easier for the person to keep getting up by themselves. They might not need assistance at all for a while if you can make it so they can be independent. It can also, assistive technology can also be very high tech. And I find it very interesting that both Japan and Europe have gone to the robot model of care provision for their aging populations, especially Japan actually has an older population than America, is that they have jumped to creating robots who are going to be doing care. Well, in America, we haven't quite gone that far. In fact, we are still trying to get people to use very low-tech things. And most of the things I'm going to talk about today are very low-tech and not that expensive compared to $10,000 robots. And we rely on care providers. We still have families that are very vested in neighbors and friends and community providers that are very interested in helping. So if we'll move on, so the range is not only low-tech to high-tech, it can also be purchased. So for instance, again, there's the purchased riser, but it can also be homemade. In many cases, assistive technology, if you have people who can do things, if you are rich in people and that type of support, is that they can build the technology or adapt something so it will work, or devices can be purchased if you have the funds to do it. It might be a combination of all of them. Assistive technology can also be something off the shelf that is used for a different version. I think one of the simplest ways to understand this one is to think about a garage door opener. Now, how many of you have a garage door opener? Very common, right? How many of you have that because you have a disability? That you cannot physically get out of your car and open the door. Okay, so that's an example of something that is off the shelf. Anybody could buy it for any reason, but for a person with a disability or a care provider, it becomes assistive technology because it makes it possible. Either for the person who is driving themselves and can't open the door, or for the care provider, that again, that energy burned up, the fatigue, the stress of opening the garage door is just one more thing to add to their burden. Another example of the range of assistive technology is that it can be off the shelf or it can be modified. So again, this is a kind of a dual example of homemade ramps on the top. You can buy ones that look just like this, or you could make your own. And then modifying an environment. By adding concrete, you now have a ramp in a garage, so it's much easier to transport a person getting them in and out of a house and down a step. So assistive technology is wide-ranging. There are hundreds of thousands of devices. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to know everything. Basically, what you need to know is, I am having trouble doing X. Is there something to help me? And there probably is something. And that's really all you need to know, because there's going to be assistance. There are services that can help you, your support through hospice. When you go out, you can grab one of these cards. Iowa Compass is a free service that can tell you what devices are available that might help you. They don't sell them. They are there just as information and referral. And it can really be as simple as, I am caring for my wife. I'm having a hard time doing whatever, getting her in and out of bed. Is there something that can help me? Or any assistive technology for work, play, or whatever that you want. Iowa Compass, that's a free service. All right, next slide, please. So let's see some examples of assistive technology for care providers, starting out with some very simple ones. And again, being a care provider, I started out very simple and do this a little tongue-in-cheek. How does the person let you know they need help? An alerting device, communicate with you, I need to help. You know, and trust me, I've had bells and I've had these dingers, but it's also a good example to show you the difference in the person's ability. What happens when the person can no longer pick up the handle? And a little tongue-in-cheek, I know you're all thinking, thank God. But I know that ringing can sometimes drive you wacky. But they do need to let you know when they need assistance. When they can no longer pick up a bell, even a simple office, I need help dinger like the red one, is easier to activate, to ding, than picking up a bell. Next slide. But let's look at some other higher tech ones. How about a wireless remote doorbell? Off the shelf. Entirely different reason. But you can carry the alerting device with you around the house, and they can push the button from wherever they are in the house, and you can hear that. It would also allow for a further distance. And it can also be set at a tone that you as the caregiver might be able to hear, because often those higher bells are hard to hear or hear for a further distance. Or an intercom system. Again, much more common, and you can carry them around the house. Next slide. Then while we're talking about alerting, although it wasn't one of the hard functions that need assistance by care providers, this is very important to me because I've had many situations, both in my family and as a care provider, when communication was lost by not planning for it and not thinking ahead of how is that person going to communicate when they've lost their ability to speak because of breathlessness or paralyzation. Think of ALS, MS, some stroke, aphasia, things like that. And again, they can be very low tech to a booklet of phrases that they can open and show someone. They have higher tech versions that they can type if that's possible, but these are pretty high tech when we're talking about care provision during the final period of someone's life. But there's also telephone that you can have right on your iPhone and it'll do it. Or it can be as simple as something as just yes and no that the person can talk to. They're agitated, they're trying to communicate something and they can't speak. We know that adds greatly to agitation of people with dementia. They can't get it out. So even just yes and no. Are you hungry? Are you in pain? Yes. You need pain medicines? Yes. You're going to have to coach the question that way. Or it could be a little bit more advanced system that has, for instance, a toilet, symbol for medicine, water, family members' pictures I want to see. You know, what are the things that they're going to want to communicate at the end that they might not be able to speak, but they could point to? A family member, yes, no, medicine, I need to go to the bathroom, or even spelling something out. If not a communication system like this that you're planning ahead for, at least some type of system that is constant and everybody's doing it the same. What can the person do and not do? Maybe it's point. Maybe they won't have that much energy or ability to do it. Can they blink their eyes? Can they look in one direction or the other? But make sure it's consistent. So they'll be able to communicate their minimum wishes at least as long as possible. And make sure that everybody that's coming in is doing the same thing. So if it's blink once for yes, everybody is saying blink once for yes, not two for yes and what, so it gets confusing for the person. Make sure, even post it above the bed. So communication is something to plan ahead for, and how is it going to happen, or at least be ready to deal with it when it needs to. Let's talk about standing aids. This is actually one of the biggest physical demands in care provision, moving people from bed to chair to another chair, wheelchair to bed. And again, let's talk about how to keep a person doing as much as they can for themselves, which is safer and also less stressful for as long as possible for the caregiver. Again, we have the example of the riser, very inexpensive or can be homemade, to get chairs or beds so the person is sitting at a right angle. So they are, their hips are at a right angle and their knees at a right angle. If they are in a dependent position, it takes a lot more. Getting out of a low chair is harder. I don't know if that's physics or grandma's common sense. Okay, but think about that. If you are, they can't oomph themselves up because the chair is too low, that now is a task that has to be assisted. Let's keep them independent and or at least assisting as much as possible for as long as possible. Next slide. Very simple, very low cost. Another one is, again, helping them stand by themselves for as long as they can. There are all kinds of standing aids. This is one that is, can be for a chair in a living room, for a chair anywhere. They have similar ones from beds. But so again, this person is helping themselves to stand up independently, but also with one hand, the person could help themselves stand up as you help lift them to a stand. So it's an assistance. Next slide is another example of other ones that are associated with the bed. Floor to ceiling poles that can be used, or bedside that they can, again, do it independently or assist. And it is safer too to have some assistance. There are other standing aids, chairs that lift up, or even little booster chairs that kind of boomerang up or catapult up a little bit. But it's just a little bit of an aid to help stand up, to assist them to get past that hardest dependent. And then it is also an assistance. If you are helping somebody, if they can have a mechanical help to get up so far, that's the hardest part of the lift for the caregiver. Next slide, please. And this is just living room central, I call that, is thinking about ways to keep things around the person that they need often so you aren't having to run and get them. In the graphic drawing, think about lights that touch on, and easy adaptation available from any of the big box stores that you can add to any lamp, so all they have to do is touch it and it turns on. Think of phones close by, their desk things, TV remotes. Think everything, make the caregiver's life easy. Keep it around the person, keep it convenient. There are homemade versions of this, and there are store-bought versions of helping the person lift the leg part of their recumbent chair. And I have relatively long arms, and I'm amazed at how hard it is for me to reach that sometime. I think that's they probably break off if they're longer, so the chair people have stopped doing it. I don't know. But there are additions again, so as long as possible, the person's able to do it. These are just little things. They are not that expensive. Next slide, please. All right. So now the person is a little bit more dependent. They can't assist as much, but maybe a little bit. Let's talk about transfer boards. There are a variety of these, lighter weight, heavier. There's beautiful wood ones. There's a man up in northwest Iowa that makes beautiful wooden ones with different colored wood, and they're just beautiful. They're heavier than this, though, so if lightweight is important, remembering that the care provider and or the person is going to have to move this. And as you can see from this slide, what it is just basically a small little ramp from the bed to the chair, from one chair to another chair. There are also ones that are curved if that, rather than a straight line, is needed. And the round part in that one is actually a disc that rotates ever so slightly. So it does help the person get in a better position to get into it. They come in different colors, different weights, as I said. So, this is something, again, instead of having to lift the person entirely and get them somewhere, is that they can assist by just scooting over until they're closer and then that final move over. Again, talking about energy and back issues and safety. Much safer to have the person's weight on something solid moving than trying to balance and lift them. There's kind of all kinds of issues, and safety and ease is also very important. Next slide, please. This is an interesting one, and I have used this, but if you think, and again, depending on whether you're in this position or not, often when you're lifting a person from a bed to a chair, a toilet to a chair or something, at some point they may not be able to move their lower legs very well. And so the legs are kind of dragging behind their hips and their knees as you move them. Well, by having the person's feet on this disc that rotates, some of you may be familiar with the term lazy Susan. It's basically just a lazy Susan down there. Is that it allows us, as the graphic at the bottom shows, for their feet to be turning as you're moving them, and they don't delay and cause, again, a dangerous situation for the person who's being moved because they're out of alignment, but also very dangerous for the person who's trying to turn those legs that aren't cooperating. It puts that person's back and safety in danger. And there's another use for that, which I'll show you further on in the program too. But a little Lazy Susan, and it's not slippery and it's not slick. And there's a padded version of it too for a different use, but this one can work for a lot of things. Next slide. Lift systems, of course, there are the more complicated lift systems. A Hoyer lift is one brand name, where you are strapping the person in a harness and that is electronically lifting them up and moving them. It might be more than what you need in hospice care, but I just wanted to show you again, from low tech to high tech, assistance in lifting is available. And this might be what is needed at the end, depending on how large the person being cared for is and where you are moving them and what you want to do for safety of everyone involved. Next. Let's talk about toileting. Now, often in hospice, and I must admit, as a public health nurse, I was guilty. Often we don't get involved or think about this till it's an issue and we jump to some type of commode. This is an all plastic one, they have metal ones. They have, and we're gonna get this back on, the commode is often what people think about. Well, we're gonna move the toilet. But again, I'm gonna ask you to start thinking about how do we move the person gradually graduating to having to go to the bathroom in bed or using a commode next to their bed? Are there ways it can be accomplished? And while we wait for the projector to catch up with us, one of the ways is to keep the bathroom as functional as possible. And again, depending on the person's height, I'm a little bit taller, is having a raised toilet. And that might be thinking ahead and actually buying a new stool, a new toilet that is taller, or you might refer to it as an ADA toilet that is taller. And it's back to that riser concept, is if the toilet is too low and the person is in a dependent position, getting up from that is going to be harder. They're going to need more assistance sooner. So one way is to get a new toilet. There are also systems that you put under your toilet and it raises it up 3 inches. You probably need a plumber or at least a pretty good handyman to do that. There are also all kinds of examples and types of raised toilet seats that fit on top of the porcelain toilet. Ones that latch on, ones just set on, they strap on, all kinds, but this is just one example here that is possible to use, and it allows, again, for that person to stand up independently if it's higher. If you have drastically different people using the same toilet, you might want one that comes off and on pretty easily. Otherwise, everybody can use the same. And there are also other things to consider when we talk about getting up and down off the toilet is grab bars that can be attached to the walls. So the person can, again, push themselves or pull themselves up, depending on what their abilities are. And one thing about grab bars that I want to tell you about, and be sure you understand, is that when you're dealing with your own home, you can put grab bars wherever you want. The ADA doesn't apply to personal homes. So while you go to a gas station and that grab bar is right here, and depending on your size, that may or not help you at all, is that when it's your own bathroom, you can put grab bars wherever you want. They can be low, they can be high, they can be angled. Wherever you need them, it's okay, as long as they're secured well. And there are very good instructions about how to get the grab bars secured. And now, are we okay to see this on the show? These are examples of combination grab bars and raised toilet seats. So they have the grab bars right built into on the top or part of an addition onto the toilet. So they're right there if you don't have the capacity or desire to put grab bars in the walls. Again, very easy to attach. Both of these are very easy to use and very recommended. And down on the other side is an example of the 2 to 3 inches that are actually put under an existing toilet, and you have to have pipe to extend it and things. Next, In bathing then, again, a very high stress, functionally demanding assistance for care providers. This is one for mental stress more. If you have clients with dementia and you are worried about them scalding, there are actually guards that are available. This is an acrylic guard that goes over the shower, so they cannot turn it on or they cannot turn it hotter and scald and burn themselves. So that's kind of a dementia thing I just wanted to throw in there. Again, there's assistive technology for all kinds of things. You just need to know what it is you're trying to prevent or what you're trying to do. Next slide, please. When we talk about bathing then, there are all kinds of aids again, and we're talking about trying to keep the person safe and independent as possible. This is an example down, I can actually raise this up because they brought a nice light one, of a bath stool that is in the one example. And these are very good if they fit in. There are ones without backs. There's just the stool. There's chairs. One of the things that I really like to show people, though, so they understand it, though, is the bath bench in the other picture. That is actually a lot safer, if it will work in your bathroom, a lot safer option. When you realize that to get into the bath chair or the bath bench, the person is somehow going to have to lift that leg over and balance at the same time. It's a risk for the person, it's a risk for the caregiver. If someone goes tumbling, the caregiver is going to go with them and probably hurt their back. But for a period of time, there are aids that can help. This is a very popular one that clamps, again, relatively easy, clamps onto the bathroom, the edge of the tub versus on a wall, so it's right there where the person can hold on while they make that risky transfer. And again, relatively inexpensive and reusable, can be moved to other parts. I had one of those for my mother, and I also actually found out it assisted me at the same time caring for my toddlers, because it helped me get up and down off the floor at the end of the day after providing hospice care at one end and toddler care at the other. Caregiver provided that to just plain pull myself off the floor sometimes. But so the bath bench is a really nice, safe option if you can move to that. The person, if you get the concept, sits on the tub, sits on the bench on the outside, so both legs are out. Their body is planted firmly on the chair then and secure when they move their legs over the tub edge and then slide over to take their shower. With some type of handheld shower, of course, is again very available and relatively easy to install. And there are versions that actually have a slider unit similar to the one that I was on the transfer board, where they sit and then it actually moves them along, so they're not having to up and up and up and up and scooch over to move over. A nice option on this too is if you have the ability is to lower the shower rod to part way up, and then the care provider can work over the shower rod versus trying to deal with it and shuffling it back and forth. So bathing, there are options to keep them more independent along the way, and also assist the care provider as care becomes more dependent and they need more assistance in avoiding the fall situation. And realizing too that the handheld shower is sometimes considered an extra cost, but it really is a lot safer and much more pleasant to have the water where it needs to be and where it should be going versus coming so high off the person. And it might not be something that someone thinks about all the time. I've gone into many homes where a family, my family and or family members of patients and friends are sitting in a bath stool, but the shower is still way high. And when you say, well, have you thought about a handheld shower? It's kind of one of those, oh yeah, moments. You know, yeah, the water's cold by the time it reaches the person, and it's in a very uncomfortable position. So that's some help with bathing. Other things to think about is, again, financing and how long in advance. If this is financially and reasonable for the family, is to consider moving the bathtub out and inserting an accessible unit. Those are available, again, from all the companies or online, where basically there is a no-step or very low-step walk-in shower. So one that it can be rolled in a wheelchair and or a very small step. Take out what's existing and inserting a new one. But that would depend on long-term planning and how long they're going to be in their house. But that is they are relatively available, but of course it is much higher in cost. Grab bars. As I said, they can go anywhere. They come in all sizes and shapes. They bend. They can be temporarily attached with units like this one or one in the picture that use suction cups, so you can put them exactly where you want them. Ones that raise and lower next to the toilet, for example. You can see that in the lower picture they have a phone right in the bathroom, and that grab bar is not in an ADA height, I can tell you right now, but that's where the person needed it. The zigzag one on the bottom is an interesting one because it can be put where you need it, but if you realize with the zigzag, you can pull and push from the same bar relatively easy. So you can use a higher one to pull on and a lower one to push on. It's just a different concept, but again, all shapes and sizes. You can put them anywhere with the toilet in the kitchen if they need it to get up from the kitchen chair, and you can put one there if you want. Wherever that you want them in your own home is fine. But consider grab bars in a lot of places for assistance. And these are some smaller low-tech or no-tech, in terminology, assistance with bathing. You don't always have to use a towel to dry someone. You can put a nice large robe on them and just gently pat them to absorb the water. It's warmer, it's more comfortable, and it's easier. The microfibers to absorb quickly. And this one I love, being an old nurse, is we learned how to make these using a washcloth. Is some type of mitten that holds the soap, or a mitten so you can wash instead of a washcloth for just more comfort. And then of course there are disposable chemical type products that you don't actually have to get in the tub. You can bathe in the bathroom or in the bed and clean the person up very nicely. And those again are readily available around town at drugstores. And Hospice can also share with you the formula to make your own, which is a little bit cheaper using paper towels and a formula. So there's do-it-yourself. There's using things in a little bit different way, but again, considering what will make it easier. Instead of bending down and trying to dry somebody with a towel, how about just, helping them into a robe and just pressing on them, and it's warm and it's comforting at the same time, which is also something to consider. What is comfortable and what is comforting? Next slide, please. Dressing. There are all kinds of dressing aids, and of course there's Velcro for buttons and things like that. But these are two that I have used and find them very interesting. And one is a gown, a dressing gown, that my grandmother would have called this a dressing gown, not a nightgown so much, but a dress you could wear around the house. But the back of it is cut out, so when they are sitting in a chair, whether it's a wheelchair or another chair, first of all, you're not wrestling with all of that to get it straight, so there's no bumps and lumps and things. But also think of the ease of assisting that person to stand up and sit down on the toilet, is that you are not having to deal with all that dress and skirt and pants down and all of that. So it makes that type of care provision much easier. But when you get to slacks, be it boy or girl, there's all kinds of, again, adapted dressing or clothes that can be purchased, or you can make your own if you have those types of skills, or know people have that skills, of side zippers, which are easier, or cut down in the front so they're more comfortable to sit in a wheelchair, getting them up and down, all kinds of aids like that. And again, Compass can direct you toward those types of catalogs that have making life a little bit easier to get dressed or to take care of somebody with limited mobility. All right, let's go on to eating. Again, eating was another high stress, need of help function of care providers. And there's, again, all kinds of help, from plates that don't slide, plates that are divided, plates that have little scoops on them, so if someone's pushing the food away and it goes up the side, it just automatically gets on the fork or the spoon. But these are some that I wanted to talk about because they're not high-tech by any means, but they're very interesting. The first one is a cup that has a U-shape cutout on it. And if you think of somebody with a stiff neck because of arthritis or after a stroke, car accident, and they have a collar on, or they're in bed, even with a raised bed, and you can't tip your head back to drink out of a cup. What do? Well, this allows you to tip the cup up without hitting your nose, and therefore you can drink without tipping your head back. My kids call this a no-nose cup when they were younger. And there's tall ones and short ones and bright colored ones and all kinds of things. You can also just take a styrofoam cup and tear out the U shape, or a paper cup and tear it out, and you've got to do it yourself, no-nose cup. There are all kinds of handled cups. The things I want you to think about is what abilities does the person that you're providing care for have. 2 hands. Larger handles are easier than little handles. If it's clear, not only do they know what's in it, but they know where it is as they begin to tip it up. Is that going to be at my lips quickly and I need to be careful, or it's okay, there's only a little bit left, I know I'm going to have to tip it further up. There are also lids with spouts that have quite large holes, and you can drink soup out of them. Do you have to drink soup off a spoon that comes out of a bowl? Is there a rule about that I'm not aware of? I don't think so. Okay. So part of using assistive technology is thinking about doing things differently and or using things a little bit differently. The cutout cup, or using this, is that yes, you could put soup in here and drink soup instead of worrying about the mess of, is their mouth open, is it not, am I hitting it, are they ready for another? They can do it more independently, or even if you're assisting them, it's easier, it's neater, it takes less time. And it all adds up in the end. If they are eating and causing a mess, now I've got more laundry to do, and I've got more laundry to do because I also got it on the sheets, and it all adds up. This is such a little thing that can make life easier. Next slide, please. There's also, can the person eat independently? And a larger handle is easier to hold and manipulate, or it might be that the angle needs to change. And if you all have a ballpoint pen or a spoon or something in front of you, see what it takes to pretending you're eating cereal or soup, and see how you bend your wrist. And it's also a balancing thing. Turning, okay? So the idea of bending a fork or bending a spoon to right angles to the handle, it means that the person can eat without having to evert or invert or flex their hand either way. It's just an up and down movement because the spoon is already bent toward their mouth. Again, they could do it independently for 1 meal, 2 meals a week, 2 weeks, longer. That's one less functional job that the care provider has to provide, and they maintain their dignity a little bit longer. Next slide. Again, simple solutions. This is one, again, keeping somebody's dignity. It doesn't have to be their grandchild's bib. It can be something that is purchased or made to reflect their likes and desires that looks like something more adultish at least. Or it can be very much do it yourself, getting a plastic tablecloth and making your own, even less expensive and longer, so it covers the whole lap and easier to do. Another possible solution to, again, keep their dignity is to take some of their older shirts or clothing, usually a button-down shirt, cut it down the back, and now you have a bib that looks just like a shirt. And you can put you can sew the edges if you want, depending on how long you plan to use it. Put a little Velcro on the top to attach it. So instead of something that looks like this, which might be embarrassing or humiliating, to keep their dignity, just put on this extra shirt, and when it's done, you take it off and you throw it in the wash. Very simple ideas of doing things a little bit differently, but again, you're trying to save clothing and wash, and it's better than doing everything, I guess. So ideas of just, again, doing something in a little bit different way. Next slide, please. All right, ramps. Again, something that everybody's more familiar with and we know them, but there are other alternatives. As you are needing to transport somebody in and out to get to medical appointments, or thinking about them getting out to socialize as long as they can. Your own home of ramping. There's prettier ones than the one I'm showing, but that's the main reason I wanted to show that. It doesn't have to look that bare and wooden. You can have nice ramps, but this is also one that's modular. So you could take it up, and when it's not needed, it's much easier to take down. At a certain point, though, it is actually more cost-effective and safer to get a lift, an outdoor lift. So there's the breaking point there for cost of the wood, but also of building it. Again, if you've got people who will build it, then all you need is the wood. There are also many other solutions, and down below there are portable ramps that you can take to go visit somebody else. I really want to go to graduation. She really wants to go to the wedding. He really wants to see the high school performance that they can't get into. Is that there are portable ramps that can go up to 1, 2, and 3 steps that a wheelchair can go up. The upper one is an example of just an entryway, and it could be a sliding glass door. That's actually one of the more infamous ones that in households is I can get around the house, but I've got a 1.5 to 2 inch bump entryway to get out to the porch or the deck. Well, there are very small little ramps that extend over that so the wheelchairs can get over that. So they can be out on the porch if that's important, or to another part of the house. So besides just the one that's probably in all your minds of that wooden ramp, is to think about other alternatives or where they might want to go if there was a ramp available. Again, transporting, getting in and out of the house, you've got them from the ramp, now you've got to get them in the car. Well, there are some aids, again, for assistance for a while if they can. One is a device that hooks onto the little door latch on the inside of the frame, and the person can push up on that to help stand or lower themselves down in a little bit more controlled way. So that's pushing and pulling. The other is a device that hooks on the outside frame, so of course you have to have a frame, not just a window type door, and they can pull themselves up. And again, that's assisting the person. They might be able to do independently or assisting the person as they move. The next thing, again, we're going to go back to that Lazy Susan concept. And having done it myself for all kinds of people, I think one of the hardest thing on a care provider's back is getting somebody in and out of the car. First, you're lowering them down if you think about the move. And at the same time, you have to now get their feet in the car and swirl them. And while you can be pretty safe doing that, is that there is really no safe way to do that for the care provider. It is hard on their back. Well, having the person sit down on this Lazy Susan, then when it's time to, and you notice I keep bending my legs, okay? Bending your legs and getting down there is turning them and lifting their legs in. Now is facilitated because they're on this Lazy Susan. And they're not dragging across the chair as you're trying to do that. A no-tech way of doing that is having them sit on a plastic grocery bag. Again, the slick plastic on fabric or leather is going to allow them to twist. So you can purchase something, or you can go the lower tech way with just having a plastic bag. It's going to allow them to slide a little bit easier to get their feet up and to turn toward the front of the car. Next. There is also very high-tech aids that can be purchased if the person can afford it or the family can afford it, of options that help electronically. You sit on the top, sit the person down, it lowers them down or lowers them up and turns automatically. So it's all a machine is doing all the work once they get into the chair. And of course there's ramps that lower down that you could just roll into the side of the van or into the back of the van if they're in a wheelchair. Again, depending on what the options are in the long-term care of what you're talking about, they are available. It can be purchased. So that's an option you can also consider. Now, I did mention that Iowa Compass, again, we have the handout here, can help you look at things and make decisions. If you want to be writing your questions down and handing those forward, I also want to, while you're doing that, talk about a couple other things. One is, talking about the person being able to do what they want and not having to ask for help. Reach your grabbers. And there are good ones and there's bad ones. I think one of the things that people tell me most often when I'm at events, I had one of those that didn't work. is a reacher grabber. And that's probably because they didn't do a very good selection process, which is the same thing you do for any assistive technology. First of all, what can you do? Okay, so to work this, I have to be able to do something with my hands. So there's this part of the device. Does it take a lot to squeeze it? How about squeeze it and lock? That's a possibility, so I don't have to hold it tight. Does it take 2 fingers? Does it take 4 fingers? What do they need to be able to work? Then there's this part of a reacher grabber. What is it they're trying to do? Well, this isn't going to help me pick walnuts off the ground or something if I'm standing. If I'm sitting, it would help. It would be long enough. Or what if I'm trying to get something out of the cupboard? Is it strong enough? For a while, I had one that was a right angle because someone had tried to lift something heavy and it had actually bent it. It was so poorly built. What are they trying to pick up? Will this end of it pick it up? There's ones with magnets for needles and things like that. Does it have enough strength to pick up a big can of peaches? Does it have enough dexterity? Let's see if I spill this on him. And strength to pick up whatever it is they're trying to pick up from where they're trying to pick it up. What else? This is a combination one. Besides the reacher grabber, it also has a shoe horn, so I can get my shoes on myself standing up. So it's nice and long. Here's a shorter long shoe horn to help me get on my shoes, which might be a problem because of edema and swelling. It's not quite long enough for me without doing a back bend to work, but it would work if I was sitting on a couch. A folded magazine, just curled in half, is also very slick and can go in a shoe and help you slide down. So no tech. Again, being able to do things independently. This is, there are sock aids that help you put on socks. You stretch the sock on and you pull them on. And they all have different, again, can I stretch it that big around? Do I have enough, as a care provider, have enough strength to do it? And mostly, besides regular socks, when we get to caregiving, we're talking about TEDs or strobe stockings. You know what I'm talking about here? You know, those horrible things that you just got to really stretch to get on. Well, I'm here to tell you there is life after TED stockings. One tip I will give you, again, assistive technology goes across ages. The same technology can help at the end of life as at the beginning of life. Turn the stocking inside out. Then just pull the foot part through. You put that on, then slide the legs up. This is also a wonderful little device, and it is very slick, almost like a Teflon. Think of it as a Teflon. So you would put this over the person's foot first. Then you would put on the TED stocking, and it slides up easier and over that ankle, or the heel part. That's the hardest part to get it all up over. It helps slide it over that, get the stocking all the way up to their knee or their thigh, whatever you're doing. And then this little part of it comes out that hole at the bottom of their foot. You understand that? So it slides and helps get past up the foot and over the heel, which is probably the worst part. And then, if you remember it, at the bottom of the foot, they have that hole, the ball of the foot. This will come out there, so they don't have to wear this all day. That will come out there. That is a wonderful and very inexpensive for the heartache, stress, strength, burnout, pain of getting TED stockings on. They are a great, great help. I think we've talked about all the devices we have out. Remember, you can find out at more. I also want to thank CarePro today for bringing the devices for me to show. And actually, we're available to bring many more if I'd wanted to, but I didn't want to ask for too much to show you within the time we have. And also for Elder Services for hosting this event today. Now, are there any questions, whether specific or general? I'm more than happy to answer them. Or you can always call Iowa Compass too. We have a few questions, and I will read them out loud. Oh, this person has very nice handwriting. Are there assistive techs lending libraries where Yes, there are lending libraries. One of my hidden agendas here is to encourage Hospice to increase their lending library. Again, but for these small devices are short-term use and they can be used more. There are assistive technology libraries, and again, Compass can tell you where they are. I'm not familiar with all of them in Iowa City or the Johnson County area, but there are some. There's also Easter Seals of Iowa, which again, just call Compass. It's the one number to call. They can tell you everything on where to get things. There is a lending library there of things. Depending on what people donate, they loan out. And you can use it for as long as you want, but then you're expected to return it so it can go back into circulation. And we are looking at other ways to increase the reuse programs right now with Iowa Medicaid, to see if we can build up a library so they are not Medicaid does not pay for most of these things, although Medicaid used to pay for some of these things. But can we build up a lending library that people can use and then return when they no longer? Because if you're caring for somebody at home, we're not having to pay for institution care, nursing home care, and those types of things. So we're working on ways to increase lending libraries. And if you call Iowa Compass, they can. And is there a cost? For the lending libraries, most of them no, although you would be expected to ship it back, to send it back to wherever the library is, or to take it back. So most of the lending libraries no. For the cost of most of these devices, they are relatively inexpensive. When you think of people time or having to institutionalize and put somebody in a nursing home, even a bath chair under $100 easily, the bath benches around $114. That's not much for the care and the ease it's going to assist. Most of the technologies that I talk about for care providers are relatively inexpensive, but we do need to build up lending libraries. Medicare, and if the person is on an elder waiver, you have more liberty to buy devices like this. Otherwise, our insurances are very limited to what they'll pay for, unfortunately. So it's mainly out-of-pocket costs. The next question, do you buy or make the TED hose get on helper? Those are purchased. Although I have looked for this type of fabric in fabric stores and haven't found it per se, or the Teflon one that I have seen. But again, it's just a satin. And again, that might be something that a group of volunteers for elder services or a group of volunteers for hospice. Some of these technologies that are handmade, if we've got woodworkers, if we've got people who sew, if you've got people that can still see that needle in the sewing machine, which, by the way, we do have an assistive technology device for that. If you can no longer thread a needle or your sewing machine needle, I swear by them. That could be making some of these things. Or the old, I remember being a Girl Scout and making the holder, the caddy for over the armchair to hold the glasses and the TV remote so they don't get lost and you have to ring the bell and say, turn the channel. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you for attending today. And if you have any questions when you go home or think about it, you can call Iowa Compass, or if you want to talk to me, you call Iowa Compass and they'll roll the phone over to me. Thank you.
You're watching City Channel 4. On TV, online, on demand, on Facebook, and now on the go on your mobile device.